to this computer. Alrighty. Hello, everybody. My name is William Poemus, and today I'm joined by Paul Johansson, my friend, and Steven Wendelin. Steven is a candidate running to represent West Virginia's 2nd Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. We will be asking him a series of important questions about his campaign and his plans for addressing issues West Virginians face. This interview is not an advertisement or an endorsement. It's simply an opportunity for voters to hear directly from the candidate. So let's start with an introduction. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and share your core policies and goals?
And before we
Great.
go, I just wanted to make sure because I said I would. My name is Paul Johansson. I have known Stephen for a while, so even though I'm interviewing with Will, I wanted that to be known, so no questions about that. And my intention is to be um, as direct with Stephen as I have been and we have been with other candidates. So I just want to put that out. Thank you.
No, thank you. All right. So my name is Steven Wendelin. I'm running for the 2nd Congressional District of West Virginia. Since the redistricting back in 2020, it has confused people what the district really is. So I always start out with a little bit of education here. The district, there's 2 congressional districts in West Virginia, and basically it divides the state north to south, with the northern district going from all the way from Harpers Ferry to the Ohio River. So we've got Harpers Ferry to Petersburg and both the northern and the eastern panhandles. It is 27 counties. And what else? It's 10,000 square miles. I know this because I've driven a lot of it. And so that's the 2nd Congressional District. If you go out onto my website, wendelinforcongress.com, there's a link that says know your district, and it simply brings up a map and then a list of the 27 counties. So who am I and why am I running? I retired from the United States Navy after 39 years. And I wanted to continue my service. Back at the time when I decided to run, Alex Mooney was our current representative. And I don't think he did a whole lot for the state. And I know there were a lot of people critical of him. And so I decided, well, that's who I was going to run against. Now, Alex subsequently ran for Senate and lost to Jim Justice. And that left me running against his heir apparent, Riley Moore. Now, Alex, Republican, voted the party line, but fairly benign. Riley Moore, however, is not so benign. He is a full-throated MAGA Republican. He ascribes to the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025, and quite frankly, doesn't quite seem to understand the separation of church and state. And he routinely publishes about his faith and faith-type issues. Okay, so that's him. So who am I? Again, I retired from the Navy. I am currently retired, and I will never go back into the workforce unless, of course, I get elected. So who am I? Who is this guy? Well, as I got towards the end of my career, I decided that my forever home was going to be West Virginia, and I bought property there, and I've lived there since 2017. I think that's right. And no, God, I can't even remember. Yeah, you have to do some edits here. Sorry, making Williams' job hard. Anyway, I moved to West Virginia as my forever home. My wife has roots in Wheeling. Her family comes from a long line of folks that came out of Wheeling, West Virginia. And I moved here because it is, quite frankly, the most beautiful place I've ever been. And I've been all over this world. And West Virginia is absolutely beautiful. And then, aside from its physical beauty, it has really beautiful people. Friends and neighbors, they're awesome here. And even though we don't all agree politically, West Virginians are just good people and they will look out for each other. So why am I running? Well, again, the first time I ran, I wanted to continue with my public service. Now I'm running because we're facing an existential threat. That threat is in the form of MAGA, the current Trump administration and the people that prop him up and allow him to be as lawless as he is. So that's why I'm running. I have no interest in becoming a career politician. I will limit myself.
Uh-oh. Same with you. Looks like he froze. I will get my phone out.
Representatives is about. It's about representing the people. And if you have people in Congress for 12 years,
Steven, you
18
lagged
years,
out. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the part after you said, shoot, what did it freeze at? I don't even know.
It was just you had about 30 seconds. We lost you.
Yeah.
okay. So I'm running this time around because our nation is fighting an
Yes.
existential crisis. Between the Trump administration and the people that prop him up, this is not okay. This is not normal. It will never be normal, and it will never be okay. The suspension of habeas corpus, how we are treating immigrants is awful. How we are treating our own citizens is awful. When you see things like the SAVE Act, which is straight up voter suppression, this is not okay. And Congress has been abdicating its responsibilities as a co-equal branch of government, and that needs to stop. And the only way we're going to stop it is by getting people like me elected to office. So with that, whatever questions you have, I'm an open book.
We'll tag
Awesome.
off. What influenced you to pursue politics in the first place? I think you might have covered that. If you want to expand on what you shared already.
I did. I spent my entire adult life serving in the United States Navy. I've served all over the world. I've served in positions of leadership. I've served in combat. And our nation is really, really important to me. Our citizens are really, really important to me. And like pretty much everyone I've ever spoken to, um, Congress is not responsive to the people. If I had to say what the number one problem is, it's money in politics. Right now, money is virtually unchecked in politics. And when that happens, the representatives are not representing us. They're representing who their donors are. And their donors are corporations, they are ideological PACs and things like that. So one of the things I've pledged and have and will not violate ever is I do not accept PAC money and I do not accept corporate money. The only group money I take is from an established, Democrat institution like the local county executive committees. I've taken contributions from them. So that's why I'm running is because Congress is no longer responsive to the people.
Awesome. You pretty much answering some of the other questions we had, but the next one is it's a little difficult, but we made it that way on purpose. Is there anything about your history which, if revealed, could harm your campaign?
That's not difficult. I'm a
Yeah.
sailor.
Well, yeah, it's difficult if there is something,
uh,
but
yeah, as I used to tell people, everything you've ever heard about sailors is true. No, I don't have any skeletons in the closet. I'm on my second marriage. The first marriage we raised three beautiful kids together, but it's with all the family separation that we had, what comes with being in the Navy so long, the marriage suffered, and so we divorced. And what that allowed me to do is I then ended up marrying my best friend. And so my wife, Lila, she, we met in Iraq. Actually, she was there as a contractor. I was there, obviously, on a deployment. And so I have three adult children. Um, and no, there's nothing out there.
good, good.
Yeah, I'm kind of boring that way, but I was a sailor. So, if there's a picture of me, maybe at a party, at some point, But Pete Hegseth, I am not. Matter of fact, I'm a teetotaler. I don't drink. So, but that doesn't mean I didn't always not drink. So, don't have anything. I don't have any problems with with people that drink. That's fine. That's their choice. They're adults. But no, not a hard question.
Awesome.
Next
Cool
entertaining
question. I like
question.
that
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Yeah,
We like asking that one because, sometimes it gets candidates to address things that should be addressed and it's on the record. So, anyways, Paul.
Yeah. No, no. My only crime is I was a sailor for 39 years.
so who are the people you do not want voting for you and why?
Who are the people I don't want voting? Obviously, I want as many people to vote for me as possible. And I think they'll all kind of self-select. So, I think the people that would never vote for me. So it's not that I don't want them to vote for me, but people that would never vote for me are the people that get the slow drip of hate from Fox News on a daily basis. Um, Now, once they meet me, it kind of flips things on the head because I'm not what they expect. I guess they're expecting horns and fangs and things like that, or um, you know, flaming liberal or whatever. So I want everyone to vote for me. That would be nice. Um, but I think someone that is just so indoctrinated by the Fox News network and some of the other journalists. They're not. They're propaganda machines. So that's the type of person that will not vote for me. And something that's I've been stumping on for a long time is, and I honestly believe this, 80% of us, no matter what your background, no matter what your political color is, 80% of us can agree on 80% of the issues, straight up. The other 20% of the issues, I think that same 80% could probably find meaningful compromises that would work. What happens though is the 20%, so the 10% on either side between extreme, I don't even want to call them conservatives because they're not conservatives, but the extreme right and the extreme left, um, we feel outnumbered. In the middle 80%, we feel outnumbered because they have louder megaphones,
Yep.
but we're not. There's far more of us than there are of them. And really anybody who in the communications world, I was Navy communications officer. We call it a steady key. They are in transmit only. They're not interested in listening at all. So people like that aren't really going to be too attracted to me. And I used to call myself a rabid moderate. That doesn't really work anymore because the political spectrum has shifted so severely in just the last few years. And I've been answering candidate questionnaires, and it's like, wow, I'm actually have gone from moderate to actually pretty progressive, just because um, these things have to be taken care of. I'm not going to label myself progressive. I'm not going to label myself as anything. You just need to listen to me and hear what I say and see what you agree on.
So I think you've actually covered this, but if you want to expand on it, what commitments are you willing to make regarding the sources of funding for your campaign? And I do think you've actually answered it pretty clearly, but feel free to reiterate it.
I'll answer it again. I am 100% grassroots. I only accept individual contributions with the FEC, which governs contributions at the federal level. Um, Small donor is at 200 or below, and then large donor is 200 up to 3,300, and that's per candidate per election. So the primary is one election, the general is a second election, and that's from an individual. So I will not accept corporate money. I will not accept PAC money. I actually did receive an endorsement last time around where the endorsement, they sent me a check, and I promptly wrote them a very nice letter and thanked them, and I really value the endorsement, but I sent the check back. And then and explained I only accept money from individuals because I only want to be beholden to the constituents. This time around, first time around, I got a lot of money from friends and family, And that was really, really nice. I didn't know what I was doing, where I should expend money. But this time I'm really trying to focus on just West Virginians contributing to my campaign, people that believe in me, that I will be representing. In a perfect world, we could solve a lot of these problems with soft and dark money um, by simply limiting contributions from people within the area that you're looking to represent. That would be by far the cleanest. And quite frankly, I think that could get us around the whole Citizens United issue. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about campaign finance and why it's a problem. And by the way, people, when I first started running, they say, well, if you want to run a serious campaign, you're going to need, you know, $4 to $8 million. It's like, no, no, no. One, I don't pay campaign staff. Everyone that works on the campaign are volunteers. I don't pay consultants. I don't contribute to the political industrial complex. There's one slight minor thing is I'm actually paying for a company that does text messages this time around. But again, I look at that more as like just advertising um, because anybody can pay for text messages. So that's what I'm doing, and you can run a credible campaign on not a whole lot of money if you are just willing to do that.
Yep.
But it's funny, people ask you, well, are you a serious candidate? That translates to how much money have you raised? Are you willing to work hard? That translates out to, are you willing to spend 8 hours a day basically trying to fundraise? And by the political industrial complex standards, I am neither serious nor willing to work hard. But the fact that I'm here and I do run a very credible campaign, um, and I'll get back to that in a second, stands for itself.
That's awesome. That's really awesome in my eyes.
Thanks, Willie.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
of course. And this is a question that, I would hope we would hope that you really have a good answer for this one. I assume you do, but it's many West Virginians have faced issues for decades, like addiction, high healthcare costs, electricity costs, et cetera, et cetera. What will you do differently to ensure your plans actually turn into results?
So the first thing is West Virginians take care of each other, but we don't necessarily vote that way, and we need to change that around. When I first started running back in 2024, I wasn't quite sure about things like Medicare for all, or Medicare for all, or universal health care, or something like that. Now that I've been doing this for a while and I've become very educated on it, yeah, that's what we need to do. It's the only thing that's going to turn this around. Uh, in the early 70s, health insurance companies were nonprofit. The fact that I realized that there was a shift in the 70s when they went from nonprofit like Blue Shield and Blue Cross to being for profit. I'm sorry, healthcare for profit, and I don't use these terms lightly because I used to teach ethics, but healthcare for profit is immoral. It is absolutely
Yeah.
immoral.
A lot of people don't know that
And
too, that healthcare used to be nonprofit.
yeah, and we need to get back to that. And so be it single payer, universal healthcare, Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it, we need to change this. We are the only industrialized country that doesn't have some sort of universal health care. And it's funny, back in the day when they started kind of making noise about, hey, moving towards this, I remember the right saying, oh, there's going to be government death boards. Okay, well, no, I don't think there will be. But right now, we have death boards being done by insurance companies and claims they're going to accept and what claims they're going to deny and what services they're going to deny. So that's really, really awful. So that I feel very strongly about. Um, Addiction problems, again, my youngest daughter is a registered nurse, and she's also was very active in her local community. And she taught me about something called harm reduction. And when I first heard it, I kind of recoiled about it a little bit. Wait a second, you're going to give them a safe place to shoot up or do their drugs or whatever? Well, yeah, but in order to go into that place, they are they are given some basic health care, and they are given options to get clean. And so we definitely need to prevent. But I am a believer in harm reduction. A lot of people, mostly that don't understand it, like, they hear things like, clean needle swap outs and things like that. But it really is a way to help save lives and improve lives. And by save lives, I don't mean just keep someone alive, but to change their lives around. So the other thing too is holding the people accountable, which we did to some extent, but that money hasn't been released and it hasn't gone to the people that it was supposed to go for. Down in Charleston, um, I I'm not in the legislature. I do follow the legislature, but not on everything because there's just so much. But that money hasn't really gotten out to the communities. So healthcare, obvious opioid crisis. I still think we have a meth problem in West Virginia, um, and we need to go after that. And you don't solve it by throwing people in prison. So I think you also asked what else should I do for West Virginia. One of the big things is we need to really shore up our public education. It is under attack. It is under attack from things like, I call it the hopeless scholarship, but it's a voucher program. It's under attack. We are taking money that should be going to public schools and it's going out of
Paul's going.
state, and it is going, yeah, it's going out of state. It is, we're consolidating and shutting down schools, and there are no guardrails on this program. We've had a lot of incidents of children that are homeschooled
Hmm.
that have died from neglect, or certainly suffering from neglect. There's no, so, this whole school choice, the money needs to follow the child. Well, okay, follow the child into a responsible situation. Um, you hear about charter schools where the kids sit on their phones all day long because there's no oversight for this. And public money, which is generated by the public, needs to go to public schools, period. My other thing too is, as a communications officer, when we don't have broadband in all the hollers and all the hills, and we have spotty cell phone coverage, that affects us. It affects our ability to learn, to work, to start businesses and everything else. So, um, and I'm sorry, this takes government. If it wasn't for oh, Paul, you're gonna have to help me out here, but back during the Depression, there was a government program to electrify the rural areas. I think it's called the Rural Electrification Agency or Council or something like that, or
Part of the
commission. Commission.
post-depression era, many of the projects. Right.
Exactly. And if it wasn't for that, we would still have haulers that wouldn't have electrical power to it. So basically, it's a way of compelling the utilities, and quite frankly, broadband and cell phone at this point, they're utilities, and they are for the common good. And so we have a long way to go for that. There was a lot of money thrown at it, especially during the Biden administration, and that money needs to be obligated, and we need to see results from it, because right now we're not seeing a whole lot of results. And so healthcare, obviously, looking at drug reduction, public schools too.
I think I can validate what you just said about DSL connections based on my computer crashing once again. Um, that was on my side this time. And welcoming back, I'm finishing pulling stuff up. And let me see. Did you know if you have a chance to go when experts present different recommendations, Will? Okay. So the question we have is when experts present different recommendations, what process do you use to reach a well-reasoned conclusion?
So first off is, are they an expert? Or are they simply calling themselves an expert? Because there's a lot of people that claim expertise that aren't experts. Have they published? Have they published in something that's been peer reviewed? Do they use basic academic standards for their research? Have they been in the industry for a long time? By the way, not all of it has to be academia. If a lineman comes to me and says, hey, the reason why we keep having outages in this area, I'm going to listen to that local lineman and consider that an expert as well. But when somebody touts an expert or touts being an expert, um, we need to look at that. I'm a big believer in facts don't lie, and facts are stubborn. And so we have to get to the facts. And by the way, opinions are not facts. And so that's usually one of my first questions is this your opinion or is this a fact? What data can you back this up with? So yeah, we have to look at it. And we are in this age of information, but what we were never prepared for was the age of disinformation. And so it takes a lot of critical thinking, especially as more and more AI comes online and it's really easy to make something look like an authoritative piece that may not be. So that's what we need to do. But here's the one thing that I think gives me an advantage over a lot of other candidates, and that's this. One, critical thinking, and two, I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn, I love to read, and I am willing. I I consider myself a pretty humble guy. I certainly don't. Hubris is a deadly sin, and I'm willing to admit when I've either made a mistake or I've changed my opinion. Like I said, on healthcare, it's like, oh wow, there's how is the government going to work with healthcare and things like that? Now, a few years later, it's like, no, this is a moral imperative. We have to make up our minds to do this and then figure it out. And oh, by the way, ACA is a band-aid. We need to completely overhaul our thinking and change the paradigm on how we're doing this. So I'm willing to change and morph, not like a politician to get votes, but as an individual. And I'm a huge history buff. And though I have friends that have PhDs in history, they will cringe, because they will tell you, no, history doesn't repeat itself. It doesn't, but there are patterns. And you need to be able to look at those patterns and say, well, this is kind of predictable on how this is going to end. And go from there.
I'm happy to see candidates that are willing to be humble and learn from their mistakes and be flexible. But the next question would be, what's one necessary policy to address West Virginia's longstanding issues that might be unpopular but you believe is essential?
Okay. So of all the questions, this is now going to be the hardest one, not because the question is hard, because my answer is hard.
Yeah.
I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in all the amendments. I also believe in the Constitution. I've, on a whole lot of occasions, more than I can think, have sworn to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to Second Amendment issues, West Virginians have a different kind of relationship with firearms
Of
than the rest
course.
of the country does.
Yes.
And so we have to be very careful with this because, for the most part, we are very kind of law abiding when it comes to how we handle firearms. I think kids are taught from an early age that firearms are one, a tool, and two, potentially are deadly. And so I think as a general population, if we could only export that mindset to the rest of the country. With that, I really, really hate it, even though this has gone through courts, but I disagree with the courts, is we often stop with the Second Amendment as far as, um, One, we never mentioned the whole well-regulated militia thing. So I think we're at a time now where we need to define what a well-regulated militia is. The second thing is shall not be infringed. Infringed is not the same thing as being inconvenienced. It's an inconvenience if you have to wait for a background check. That's not an infringement. And this is where I might differ from some folks in my party is I don't think it's necessarily a particular weapons platform like assault weapons or things like that. I really think where we need to be focusing is making sure that the criminals and people that have mental health issues do not have access to any kind of firearm. People that have history of violence or domestic abuse. That's where the focus needs to be. When you just try and ban a particular type of platform, okay, we had an assault weapons ban for a while, but I don't think that's the answer now. Again, I think we need to really look at and a well-regulated militia act defines what that is. Pretty much every member of the household in Switzerland has an assault weapon that was issued to them by the government, either in a closet or underneath their bed in a locked box, because they are all members of their armed services. They've been trained. They know how to service the weapon. They know how to fire the weapon. They know how to clean it and maintain it. And so that's the way I think we need to be looking at it. So, and maybe even an endorsement process of, hey, you want to own quite literally a weapon that is, let's say fully automatic. Okay, that requires a whole lot of endorsement. The other thing too is requiring people to responsibly secure their weapons and holding them accountable for if their weapons are not being secured properly and someone gets a hold of it and some tragedy ensues, guess what? You need to be held accountable. So, again, of everything in West Virginia that I have to kind of walk a fine line on, it is Second Amendment. I believe in the Second Amendment. I am a firearm. I own lots of firearms. Matter of fact, I would put my gun lockers up against any other candidate. and and also I know how to use them too. The United States Navy spent a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time teaching me how to shoot, and I know how these weapons work, and I know how to maintain them and use them properly. So, so I'm not anti-gun, but what we're doing now is wrong. And when people deny that Sandy Hook happened, I mean that should have ended the conversation right then. It should have ended the conversation right then. We should have come together as a country and figure out how we are going to prevent the next Sandy Hook. And we didn't do that. And now, after the shooting of Alex Preddy, clutched the pearls, as my wife would say, the NRA came out and said that was a violation of his Second Amendment rights. And you know what? They're right. I can't believe I'm agreeing with the modern NRA, but in that instance, I am. So, and then to have MAGA say, well, he shouldn't have been carrying out a demonstration. He shouldn't have been carrying, if he was going to be around law enforcement. There are no asterisk signs on the Second Amendment. Now, what we do need to say is, hey, what's the well-regulated militia look like? So there you go. That's probably the most, and again, I'm not anti-gun. I'm not trying to take guns away. Matter of fact, we couldn't do that even if we tried.
Yeah.
But need to be much, much, much better at making sure that people that either have permanent issues, like a history of violence, or even temporary things like a mental health crisis that they're going through. By the way, we do this in the military. I personally, as an officer, have had to secure the weapons, personal weapons of sailors that work for me that were going through a mental health crisis. I secured them, and guess what? When the doctor came back and said, you know what, he's okay now, guess what I did? I gave him back to him. So we made sure they got back to him. So that's not a matter of the Second Amendment. That's a matter of caring about human beings.
Awesome. That was I like the detail that you put into that answer, honestly. Yeah, so
And
Paul, if you want to go ahead
and
with the
next, so what experience
Open
or
book, baby. Open book.
you got it. Now, you're campaigning against Riley Moore if you get through the primary, which I don't, is there anyone else running in the primary on the Democratic side?
Oh, there most
Yeah,
certainly are.
there's a
Oh, okay.
There is a
Well,
three-person
that's right. I
contested
do remember.
primary.
Right, you got it. So you have a chance to go into this.
Yeah.
So what experience or expertise best prepares you for this role, and where do you expect to rely on advisors?
So, well, like I said, I spent not just a career in the Navy, I spent two careers, essentially, 39 years, all the way from enlisted to officer, retired as a commander. And some basic things is one, I understand the federal budget cycle and how it's supposed to work and how it's written and how it doesn't work. And so that right there helps me out a lot. Um, the leadership that experience I've had, you don't just you just don't read a book and become a leader. You have to learn how to become a leader. And I've learned and learned and learned and continue to grow as a leader. And so that helps me out a lot. Um, as far as role of advisors, um, well, advisors are important, but quite literally, the buck stops with me. So I will always listen to the people close to me. I will listen to the people on the opposite end of the spectrum because I need to understand where they're coming from. Okay. And quite frankly, you have to have a level of empathy that I think a lot of our elected officials are missing and being able to understand what's going on. Um, my wife actually helps me out a lot with this. When the first time I was campaigning, there was someone who kind of gave me the Heisman once they found out I was a Democrat and walked on. And my wife, who's actually a registered Republican, like ran her down and chased her down and said, what's going on? And she was talking about, well, I can't vote for a Democrat. She goes, well, why not? She goes, well, all these immigrants, all these freeloaders. Okay, how does that affect you? Pointing out that West Virginia is 98% white. Um, and she says, well, after I get my Social Security check and they deduct my Medicare, um, I only have $20 a month. Okay, that's the problem. But it wasn't until we pulled that thread long enough that, okay, that's something that is an issue that is affects a human being. And let's figure out what's going on there. Why is that the case? And what kind of reforms we can do. Another case of, and just talking to people. I don't have to surround myself with experts. I need to surround myself with constituents. Um, there was another woman who came up to me when I was on the campaign trail last time and talked about how she was raising her granddaughter. One parent was dead, the other parent was incarcerated. Heartbreaking stuff. And she said she's in the military. We call it the horns of the dilemma. Horns of a dilemma. She was on the horns of a dilemma. If she wanted to um, uh, get her daughter onto her health insurance, she would have to adopt her daughter to get her on her granddaughter to get her on her health insurance. But if she does that, then her daughter would lose her Social Security stipend from the deceased parent. So what do you do with that? So then she's on Medicaid, okay, which is not, I'm glad we have it, but not great for anybody. So, so we need to look at cases like that and look for where we can reform these laws and not put people in situations like that. She's trying to do the right thing. She's taking care of her granddaughter. She wants to make sure her granddaughter has good health coverage, all right? But she also doesn't want, to be impoverished either by trying to do this. So so I will tell you, as far as now that I'm thinking about it, experts are fine. That's fine. But I'd much rather hear from the constituents.
I like that answer. And you kind of, it's funny, you're touching up on all the other questions just like naturally, because the next one was like, how will you engage with constituents that did not vote for you or strongly disagree with you? But if you want to touch up more on that, but you kind of
No,
already
oh,
did.
actually, just a little bit. So here's the deal: whether they voted for me or not, they're still my constituents.
Good answer.
And that is something that young Riley Moore has not quite figured out. We focus on, oh, his base, their base, that guy's base. No, once you are elected, everyone in your district is your constituency, and you need to listen to them and you need to engage with them on a regular basis. And it is absolutely abhorrent that our elected officials, especially on the right side of the aisle, don't engage with their constituency. I think they were told basically don't hold town halls because you're going to get tore up. Um, the Democratic legislators out of Charleston have done a really good job at calling I think it's called the kitchen table tour. Um, but you need to do that. Now, in my case, West Virginia, the second congressional district, is huge. Like I said, 27 counties, 10,000 square miles. Ideally, I would hold a town hall once a month in a county. That would still take me, I'd be 3 months over that first, that first, election cycle in order to hold a town hall like that. So I'm gonna have to figure that one out. I think virtual town halls are good. Definitely televising. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to pull a Governor Morsi or an Alex Mooney where there's a telephone phone hall, but they're screening the calls. You
Hmm.
can't do that. You cannot do that. You need to take the lumps with the good. And they routinely, if someone's going to ask a hard question, those calls are screened. So but definitely you need to engage with the constituency and you need to be out there. By the way, Congress only works Tuesday through Thursday. That leaves 4 days in the district. Do I want to be on the road that entire time? No, honestly. But you know what? That's the job, and the job pays handsomely. And so if I need to drive out to Petersburg from Hardy County, which is where I live, that's a 5.5 hour drive. Well, maybe I'll hit a couple other counties while I'm out there.
All right,
Paul?
here's a question that's potentially fun for you, and I believe this is our last question. What is your plan for transparency and accountability while in office? And if you want to expand that to accountability beyond the office, please go ahead and do that.
Oh, this is good. So, like I said, I'm a tech guy, and one is a website. I can't compel other congressmen to do this, but I can create my own website that basically has my calendar published, so you can see who I'm meeting with and when. The minutes of those meetings will be published. I don't do backdoor deals, and that is probably not going to make me very popular with the lobbying group, but I don't do that. So publishing my calendar, my website, publishing my voting record, and not just my voting records on yay and nays, but why I voted that particular way. And especially, if I get a couple of good staffers that can manage that for me, that's how I'm trying to look at that. Because quite frankly, the voting records are public, but they can be a little difficult to get through. So the FEC does a good enough job because I don't take PAC or corporate money. And then there's other things like open secrets and stalking the Capitol that show kind of where the money is at. So I don't need to replicate that. Um, Once I get, actually, Paul, that's a really good idea. I could do that right now on my website. Is I can post a link to my FEC to my reporting so you can see where the money is. I like that. So anyway, so yeah, that's how I'm planning on maintaining transparency. And then again, being willing to talk to constituents and listen to the angry people as well as the people that support me.
Hey,
Well,
And
Will,
yes, they come in those two flavors.
yeah.
a question we asked previously about
Oh yeah, rank choice.
elections. Yeah, want to go for it?
But what is it?
I forgot the wording
All right.
exactly, Paul.
The
So
question is
go ahead.
simply thing is, do you support the idea of ranked choice voting? And would you be willing to commit to seeing that in some legislative form?
Honestly, I don't know enough about it to say absolutely 100%. I know a little bit about it. I know basically what it is. What I would want to look at, so I know what ranked choice voting is, and I've seen the proponents of it, of how they think it's the best thing since sliced bread. What I'd like to see is areas that do ranked choice voting, like Alaska, but I'd like to see it in maybe even some larger, more dense um, places, and see kind of what the outcomes are, and does it improve? Does it improve things like taking dark money and soft money? Does it improve the overall um, quality of the candidate? Um, so you got to remember. Sorry to go here, but I'm going to go here. Um, Early on in the 1930s, late 1920s, early 1930s, the Nazi Party never held a political majority. Okay, but basically, they they came to power because everyone else was there were factions, and it split them up. Now that's the bad side. The good side is basically ranked choice voting is how we got Abraham Lincoln. Okay, he was never anyone's first choice. He was deemed a good compromise because everyone was polarized on their first choices. So we got an Abraham Lincoln out of it. So again, we need to look at it. I would consider it. I consider everything, but honestly, I don't know enough about the outcomes of it to say yes, 100%. The two-party system, I think people are very frustrated with it. The electoral college, I think people are really frustrated with it. And especially with this day and age, the reason for the electoral college is because communications didn't move that fast. Okay, we needed a way of being able to hold an election and get the results of it that didn't take 6 months or
Right.
4 months. And so maybe it's time that we start looking at some constitutional amendments.
I would definitely encourage you to look it up, see what you think. I believe New York City is one example, and it is around in different from locality to state level around the country. So it would be a good way to get a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree, the a lot of the proponents that talk to it, and I am one, is it's really about addressing the duopoly issue between the parties, giving somebody who's a Republican a chance to say, hold on a second, I'm less concerned about my guy than about their guy, and to move over. And it does exactly moving things back towards the middle, which is something you've also mentioned. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so I see the value in that. The other problem, the problem with that is, so in the Democratic Party, we call ourselves, and we're getting back to it, calling ourselves the Big Tent Party because we are a lot more inclusive. But again, one of the reasons why I think in West Virginia we don't fare very well is because we have been so fractionalized. We saw that in the last Senate primary, without naming names, where one candidate didn't win and his supporters kind of took their ball and went home. That doesn't, or if a otherwise qualified candidate is not in agreement with you on one issue, but it's very important to you, then people stay at home. And so, the old adage is it's complicated. So like I said, I'm not going to say no. I don't want that. I'm not going to say yeah, absolutely. Let's get on board. I'm saying we need to look at it a lot. But there's a lot of other things that we can do in the meantime, like reforming the money in politics. Okay, getting the money out of the politics. Um, and looking at, getting rid of, uh, basically voter suppression and gerrymandering. Fun fact, real quick, is West Virginia cannot be gerrymandered at the U.S. House level. Now, down ballot, they gerrymander the hell out of it. But at the U.S. House level, it cannot be gerrymandered. And this is why, because our state constitution has three basic requirements. One, a county cannot be split. One is the populations have to be roughly equal between congressional districts. Well, guess what? If we could take those three basic rules and put them across the entire country, now, of course, that's kind of a little bit of a problem with the Constitution right now as written in the 10th Amendment. But if we could employ that, gerrymandering at the congressional level would go away. West Virginia cracked that code back in the 1880s or 1890s. They came up with that amendment. So
Awesome.
something I'm really proud of. But I need to share that with folks.
Awesome.
Oh,
Well,
did I
Stephen,
freeze?
no, you're good.
Nope,
So,
nope, we're
so
good.
Stephen, thank you so much for your time. We're out of time here, so
Okay.
we gotta get to that. So, thank you so much for all the detail with your answers.
No, please do. I look forward to seeing this, and I look forward to sharing it
Yes.
with as many people as I can because I want them to know me and not
Awesome.
just whether I'm blue or red or MAGA or liberal or whatever. So.
Awesome.